In the walls of the temple, the confession of a girl was heard, who confessed to the Holy Father that she had committed a terrible sin. She said that everything happened by chance and tried to justify herself with forced circumstances, in particular, an inevitable desire to have a close relationship with the priest. The girl told the minister that the man was incredibly hot, and now she thinks about him every day, and no matter how hard she tries, she cannot forget. The main character even apologized for not being able to describe her feelings more appropriately and added that it is simply impossible to stop it, even if only she gets the pleasure. And then the girl noticed that there was another problem, which was hidden behind the presence of a pink elephant that she once met. But then the main character got angry and confessed to the priest that this elephant is like a devil who keeps up with her. The priest tried to understand what kind of elephant he was talking about, but the girl was already pouring out her soul about how she was afraid if everything did not come to the point that she would enter the Holy Father's room again, and was worried that God would not forgive her for this. The main character decided to end her confession there and thanked the priest, wishing him all God's blessings for parting. Not jokingly, the excited man replied that the girl looked as if she did not regret anything. So let's meet Heiser Glein, who has been working as a seamstress and fashion designer for 8 years, and all this time she was preparing for the day when her name would finally become famous. The girl dressed the famous playwright's opera troupe, which impressed the whole world. And recently, they announced that they were recruiting new designers to create costumes for the diva. Our heroine believed that this was the perfect opportunity to make her debut, which she dreamed of all her life, but all her expectations fell hopelessly in one moment when someone villainously destroyed the creation of her hands. Her boss was outraged that the girl did not follow the dress and now blamed someone else for her inattention. The competitor immediately perked up, because now there was one less participant in the final selection, and she knew for sure that she didn't have time to create a new Heiser dress. Our heroine realized that her colleague Reika was behind this case, and the boss continued to curse, and then told her to pack her things and go on a forced vacation for a month. Of course, the girl was disappointed, because she worked for 8 years in this disgusting atelier for a tiny fee and got such a result. For all these years, such an opportunity to escape was presented to our heroine for the first time, and with its loss, she fell into deep despair. A colleague tried to calm Heiser down, but he was only dealt with because the question sounded to him why the universe is treating her so unfairly. The young man decided to comfort the girl by saying that he had found a job for them in the Artsheim Temple. And now he did not understand why our heroine was not happy with such news. Heiser, in response, asked if he understood what they were supposed to do in this temple, and, without waiting for an answer, said that the seamstresses there are locked up and forced to sew 1,000,000 identical suits for priests, and then they are sent to prayers where they have to sit for a while 7 hours. The young man tried to explain that everything was not so bad at all, and Ben asked the girl if she had heard about the new clergyman. A colleague told Heiser that this man is written about even in the newspapers, where they say that he is a very handsome and good holy father, and his divine power is extremely great, which is why his prayers are especially effective. The young man tried to convince our heroine that she perhaps will sew clothes for this handsome man, of course, on the condition that she goes to the Artsheim Temple. Ben encouraged the girl not to be upset if she didn't have the money to pay the rent right now, and even suggested that she might try to get a job as a cook at the same temple, though he then mentioned that with her cooking skills, that was a rather dangerous idea. Our heroine pondered the situation, while Ben continued to say that nowhere else did they pay as well as in the church, and added that, on top of everything else, they provided free housing for the staff. Before Heiser could even say a word, Ben announced that he was putting her name on the list and ran away satisfied. Our heroine thought that things were so bad that she couldn't hurt to have a little drink now. But she drank a lot and now staggered home, still not believing that her life was so unsuccessful. And then her attention was drawn by a small animal that was asking for help. Heiser looked around and approached the creature, which was shivering from the cold and the heat, and asked what had happened to him. When our heroine took this lump in her arms, she assumed that he was in trouble, like her, and the baby elephant, through tears, asked the girl if she would help him. The elephant sheepishly informed Heiser that his nose was too cold and he needed help. Our heroine even felt better, although it seemed to her that it was more like a dream. But then the girl took out a flap from the ruined dress and asked the elephant to wait a few minutes, and she got to work herself, although she didn't see anything at all because she was drunk. But Heiser was by no means a seamstress, so a little dexterity of hands and the elephant's nose was immersed in a special bag in which it became warm, although our heroine saw that her seam turned out to be crooked. The elephant also noticed this defect, which he told the girl, but at the same time, he expressed his surprise even at such a designer thing. The girl was ashamed and decided not to comment, but simply asked to wear it with pleasure and went on her way. And the elephant turned out to be flying and followed our heroine, inquiring about her name. When he recognized him, Heiser said that he always helps back those who save him and asked the girl to accept his blessing. The elephant resolutely announced to our heroine that he would give her the opportunity to share passionate love with the most handsome man on the continent. And Heiser took the opportunity and asked if it might be better then to give her precious stones falling from the sky or, for example, an enchanting debut. But the elephant replied that such he does not fulfill the wish. As a result, our heroine made jokes and made a statement that she loves handsome boys and will definitely not miss the opportunity, given the opportunity. The next day came and the team of craftsmen arrived at the Artsheim Temple, where Ben commented that at least it would be cool because of the presence of the artifacts, because it was the very hot season. The workers were met by one of the servants and invited the craftsmen to their rooms, and also noted that the boys would sleep separately from the girls. Our heroine immediately wanted to take a bath out of the way and went in search of a bathroom. And since she was in this building a few years ago, she just had to remember its location. But Heiser couldn't find the right room until she remembered the words of Bertie, who said that the central square had recently been renovated. And at that time, while the girl was considering the location of the rooms, she met a swarm of bees, which were crossing the window on their way from the garden. For some reason, they reacted to Heiser in a strange way and headed straight for her, after which the girl screamed that these bees had gone mad and ran as fast as she could. One of the servants looked out at her screams, and our heroine immediately began to ask him for help, explaining that she was being chased by a swarm of bees. The matter ended with the fact that the girl fell on this priest, who also fell, and grabbed a stick with her hand that was sticking out suspiciously and was under the priest's clothes. Our heroine clung to her tightly and was not going to let go, even after the young priest demanded that the girl get off him and remove her hands. Heizer had long known the truth that people weaken in the face of beauty. And to know true weakness, one had to see that same unique beauty with one's own eyes. And now the girl looked at this handsome man and continued to examine the stick she came across. She saw those suffering eyes, and it seemed to her that he would cry now. And the priest, in turn, was already begging him to stop and not rub him. Our heroine still wanted to find out what it was that got into her hand. And then she became aware of what was in her hands. And then, in addition, the question arose as to what she was doing, after which she began to order herself let go of this extremely stressful thing. Heizer mentally assessed the size of the priest's bulges and even assumed that, based on his reaction, he didn't even mind continuing. Now, our heroine did not recognize herself, so her speech did not obey her, and she told this priest that she could take care of him, asking if he really had such an important rank. In response, the man barely uttered that she was truly shameless. But the girl did not stop, and she said that he had nothing to be ashamed of. And the most interesting thing is that this entire piquant situation was accidentally captured by a camera. Olga, who was a journalist and part-time friend of our heroine, walked around the temple and prepared photos for her upcoming report. When the journalist asked her friend what was going on, Heizer said that it was all just a coincidence, because she suddenly saw a swarm of bees chasing her, which is what started it all. When Olga wanted to know where the bees were sitting now, the girl pointed to the ceiling, but found a familiar baby elephant there. He turned to our heroine with a statement that he had come to repay the debt. While our heroine was looking at her unusual acquaintance, Olga told her friend that it was clearly time for her to get away from problems. The fallen priest was now assisted and helped to get up. And meanwhile, the church servant demanded an explanation from the journalist about what a shameless girl attacked the priest right in the holy building. Heizer guiltily told her friend that it was time for her to go and asked to keep everything a secret, and Olga agreed, stressing that there was nothing to worry about because they were friends. But the next day, the first strip of the newspaper was full of super scandalous news, which said that the chastity of Asher Renver, who was the first candidate for the priesthood, was in danger. When our heroine saw the issue of the newspaper, she was very upset because her friend cheated her, exchanging friendship for a career. Heizer also blamed the pink elephant for this situation and noted for herself the moment that for some reason, only she sees it. The girl turned to this pink animal with the question of what kind of tricks these are and whether all these events are the work of his hands, but he mysteriously neither confirmed nor denied her words. Then he told our heroine in general that people worship 5 gods, and he is among them the most worthy, the most benevolent, and the most straightforward. After which the girl interrupted him and asked him not to hurt her with this useless speech. Slanik nevertheless asked to listen to him to the end and declared that he had many names, among which she could know Agrafad, Eros, Cupid, but at the same time noted that no one knew his real name. And when our heroine asked for this secret information, she learned that the elephant's name was Porin, after which she asked how he was going to fix what had happened. Heizer heard the counter question if she would return the favor if he helped her, and then our heroine called the elephant a real cunning villain. Porin asked our heroine if she didn't like the idea of spending a beautiful night with the most handsome man on the continent and reminded her that she herself said that she was always happy in the company of handsome young men, to which Heitzer replied that what happened in the corridor was not like that to a passionate meeting. The elephant answered that he was able to instill love in hearts, but not to change someone's personality, and explained that he had enough abilities to marry her to the most enviable, handsome man in this part of the planet. Of course, Porin introduced an amendment, emphasizing that this handsome man turned out to be a somewhat problematic personality. But no matter what, it was Asher Renver, according to the elephant, who was the best candidate for our heroine's partner. Porin admitted that his magic was almost ineffective on this young man due to his inherent powers. Our heroine was already completely disappointed in this whole venture, and then asked why he used bees. The dream book answered that he cannot control the mind of her chosen one, but he can push them together with the help of favorable circumstances. When the girl asked what this meant, the elephant explained that he could help in every possible way so that they ended up in the same bed and spent a passionate night. When our heroine asked the elephant not to do this, Porin replied that he would not let his blessing disappear without a trace, and firmly announced that his career would not be destroyed just because Asher had some divine barrier there. Our heroine realized that she was seriously screwed, because everything said that this pink elephant was going to carry out his plans without taking into account her opinion. And Porin, as evidence of this, announced to Heitzer that he would do everything possible to make this man lose his virginity exactly with her. The news was now all over the place, and people were gathering in droves to find out more news about Asher Renver. The local residents discussed the holiness of the minister and his almost virgin chastity, considering this man to be similar to the Prince of Artsheim. Of course, our heroine was a witness of these conversations, and even heard how they were discussing a truly brave lady who dared to encroach on the chastity of the Holy Father. Heitzer was now berating herself for not keeping her mouth shut, and decided that now she needed to answer for her words by getting down on her knees and begging for forgiveness. Temple officials did not comment on what happened, although they believed that terrible events had unfolded. Our heroine did not know where to find Asher and understood that no one would tell her where he was, because many people were now looking for him. She even thought that she should go back to herself. And then she remembered the man's surprise again. She wanted to come to an understanding in front of him to remove her guilt, because she had been up all night because of what had happened. Heitzer decided she would wait by his door until he left or came in, because sooner or later, it was bound to happen, and it happened already at sunset. But the girl fell asleep, and Asher stood by her and did not say a word. As he was going into his cell, Heitzer woke up and stopped him, although he mentally resented the fact that this girl had already poisoned his life and was looking for a meeting again, and even thought that if he did not pay attention to her, then maybe she will go quietly. Our heroine started a conversation with the fact that he prayed for so long and fell silent, and an awkwardness hung over them. Asher decided to just walk away without reacting, but Heitzer started asking him to stop again. Our heroine introduced herself on the way and said that she works in the temple as a seamstress and just came to apologize for what happened. The girl admitted that she wanted to send a letter of apology, but decided to come and talk in person, and mentally assessed that this young man was really nice, but he did not want to even look at her. Heitzer assumed that in his eyes, she looked like some kind of crazy person who would not stay away from him, and began to explain that she had been attacked by a swarm of bees, and she tried to fight them off and collided with him, accidentally grabbing an intimate part of her body. In response, the girl received simple silence, so she could only hope that he would understand her and everything would be fine. And then our heroine's brakes suddenly went off again, and she told the priest that she didn't even realize that it was part of his body, because everything was so big that she thought she had caught a bat. When the words flew out, only later did the girl understand what she had said, and now she was holding her mouth closed with her hands so as not to blurt out something again. The priest asked the girl why she had come to him, to ask for forgiveness or to try again. Our heroine honestly answered that she did not want to say this, and Asher asked her if she knew how many such girls he met on his way. The priest did not wait for an answer, but added that she might not try to seduce him, because she would not succeed, after which he informed her that her apology was not accepted, and also ordered her to overcome her sins, taking comfort in the word of God, as well as in forgiveness, and he himself expressed the hope that they would not meet her again. Now our heroine was sure that things had gone nowhere worse, and the elephant concluded that this man still had that temper, and even offered to tie him up. Heitzer was very painful to realize that the Holy Father took her for some kind of pervert. The elephant, in turn, decided to give the girl a lesson in palmistry. But she reasoned to herself that even if the God of love incites her to an intimate relationship with the Holy Father, she will continue to live there as if nothing had happened. The next day, Ben reported that everything would be ready to go in a couple of days and said he would take a break until the project was finished with the final product. This led to the fact that our heroine ran to meetings all week and was very tired. One day, returning home, she remembered that she had not eaten anything all day and thought about throwing something in her mouth. When the girl had a snack, she felt very tired and decided to take a cold shower and go to bed to rest. Our heroine decided to cut the road to the temple, but in the semi-darkness, she smelled chrysanthemums and soon ran into the handsome Asher. He decided that she was chasing him, about which he asked directly, but the girl gave a negative answer. Heitzer began to make excuses that she just stopped by for dinner after work and had no idea that she would meet him here, and even began to swear. She didn't like that he was looking at her so terribly, so she just asked him to pass by. As Asher stepped forward, he told our heroine to turn away, which she did, saying that she had no intention of doing anything to him. But the elephant was also at the scene of these events and decided that now is the time to put his plan into action. Our heroine did not have time to ask him what he was doing here, as Porin intriguingly ordered her to just carefully monitor what was happening now. Heitzer reached for the priest to protect him from the elephant's push, but it was too late. Although Porin managed to fly up to the girl and inform that the matter was done, and at this moment, our heroine accidentally stumbles. She stumbled at just the distance to grab hold of the priest's clothes. She breathed a sigh of relief that she didn't fall because Asher also held her with his strong arm. Now the girl sincerely thanked the priest for the fact that he prevented her from falling, and she did not break her nose, although later she wondered what the pieces of cloth were in her hands. When our heroine looked at the priest, she was surprised, because she saw that she had torn his clothes with her own hands. Heitzer decided to comment that even in such heat, it is better not to walk without clothes, and decided to at least somehow rehabilitate the situation, at the same time saying that it was somehow strange that his clothes were torn to pieces. The priest asked not to touch his body, but the girl replied that she tried to cover it at all, emphasizing that the material was not breathable at all. In the end, the girl said that it would be good if they returned to the temple before dawn, because if anyone noticed them, they would be on the front page of the newspaper again. Asher reminded our heroine who he was, and asked her to turn her head away and not look directly at him. Now the girl did not understand how to get out of this awkward situation and even thought that the priest was angry. When she saw his despair, she began to ask him not to be upset like that, sincerely announcing that she did not have time to see anything. But the young man did not believe her. He also asked not to make a fool out of him for not understanding how she looked at him. Then our heroine admitted that she actually saw a little of his body, but no more than the presence of 8 cubes and a neatly folded navel. And then, so that he would not be upset, added that everything about him was perfect, including strong thighs and calves, even the shaped nipples, not to mention the size of the breasts themselves, which, according to the girl, were larger than her own. These words did not comfort the priest in any way, and then our heroine dryly apologized, thinking about this topic, and came to the conclusion that he must be given time to come to his senses. And the elephant, by the way, laughed with satisfaction at the fruits of his hands. Suddenly, our heroes heard someone approaching them, and in a little while, strangers will come out from around the corner and notice them. Heitzer offered Asher to go to her house, but the priest preferred to stay outside. But the girl continued to persuade Asher to do something instead of arguing in vain. Passers-by approached, and then our heroine decided to act at her own risk, telling the priest that she would try to protect his wholly naked body from male gaze. Heitzer found a utility room and decided to shove the priest in there with a request not to move. While Asher resisted, they almost ended up alone, and then he dragged her into his utility room. Passers-by settled nearby and now calmly discussed the beauty of the night sky and stars, while our heroes, leaning against each other, stood in silence. Finally, Heitzer broke the silence and asked Asher why he did that, but the man said he had no idea, although the girl continued to try to figure out why he pushed her into the cramped closet. And then the priest asked the girl to take responsibility because she tore off his clothes, so the situation led to such consequences. While our heroine caught herself thinking that she was slowly going crazy, the passers-by were not even going to leave the cramped cell, but on the contrary, got bottles of alcohol and sat down to chat about all sorts of things. The girl decided that she just had to wait until these people left. But on the other hand, there was no telling how much they were going to drink, and besides, they now had to listen to the boring details of their lives. After a while, Heitzer noticed that they were both sweaty and her clothes were sticking to her body, but she still had the pleasant smell of chrysanthemums. Asher asked our heroine not to breathe so often, arguing that it was unpleasant for him. Our heroine obediently stopped breathing, taking air into her lungs, and the priest continued to say that he did not really like feeling her breath on himself. And the girl could not hold back and ask the priest why he could breathe on ordinary people. But ordinary people could not breathe on him, can't. Asher then asked her to get away from him, but the girl insisted that this was impossible. The priest could barely contain himself and already admitted out loud that he had gone mad, and our heroine mentally resented his wildness as a priest in relation to ordinary people. The young man asked our heroine not to move, and when she made a few body movements, he began to reproach her for not moving away, but on the contrary, rubbing against him. The girl replied that she was trying her best, but the priest was already begging her not to move, even though Heiser was trying hard to find a comfortable position for the two of them to wait comfortably. And finally, our heroine felt the stick that was bothering her so much and made the two of them uncomfortable in this tight space. The priest barely said her name, but the girl was engrossed in studying the stick stuck between them. And even though Asher asked her not to touch anything, Heiser continued, explaining that it was pressing into her stomach. Finally, the man was able to control himself a little and already persistently asked not to touch it, declaring that it was not a stick. But the girl asked incredulously if he really wanted to say that a wild anaconda had crept up to them and stood with them in third place. And the priest then explained that it was simply an integral part of his body. Our heroine was horrified at the thought that he was able to get excited in such a situation and asked if he was some kind of pervert. Then Asher admitted that he himself did not understand what was happening to him and added that with each exhalation he felt strange, and that is why he asked her not to breathe. Our heroine, in response, asked the priest to calm down and start thinking about something sad, but Asher emphasized that it was easier said than done. And then the girl bravely offered to solve this problem with her own hands, although she herself did not believe what she had just said. Asher asked back if she was taking him for some kind of animal, but Heiser replied that there was nothing shameful about it and even believed that, being in such a situation, her intervention could be attributed to emergency care. The girl asked the priest not to be ashamed of anything and not to restrain himself. Asher continued to be shy, but he couldn't hold back anymore and pressed tightly to our heroine, asking her not to spy. Heiser concluded that he was very impatient but promised not to look. For our heroine, all this was somewhat strange and the priest cursed it all. At one point, Asher was so close to Heiser that she started to worry that they would be overheard. But he didn't care and even asked her to say something to him. The priest admitted to our heroine that her voice drives him crazy, and meanwhile passers-by, who were sitting nearby and drinking, heard strange sounds coming from the cell and even wanted to check on her. Heiser asked the priest to come closer to her and finish his business faster, and the men hesitated on the outside and finally decided that they must have heard or someone had drunk too much and was now rioting. As the morning came, our heroes finally got out of the pantry, and the tormented Heiser continued to resent these alcoholics who had been drinking next to their cozy place all night. Now our heroine asked the priest how he was even going to go out in this form, but he asked her to just go ahead. Heiser looked at this handsome man and thought that if he was older, she wouldn't be so kind to him. And then she thought about the fact that the clothing stores were still closed, and to leave him here like this after what had happened. Too cruel, and a brilliant idea suddenly came to the girl's head, although she immediately warned the Holy Father that it might seem a little strange to him. Our heroine considered this an ideal way out of the situation, so she simply ordered the priest to endure. They both thought outrageously about what each of them was doing, but the matter was being done. When Heiser brought the garbage can with the Holy Father to his cell, she asked for the key, but he said he never locks the door. The girl checked, and it turned out to be true, although she did not understand why the priests did not lock their sleeping quarters. Asher replied that it took a lot of holy power to enter his room, and the girl was already allowing him to finally get out of the tank. The priest said that he would not really like to go out with her, and then our heroine simply advised him to take a bath and have a good rest. Asher did so, and when he lay down in bed, he thought he was going to collapse from exhaustion, and his last thought was the hope that this seamstress would not come to him, at least in his dreams. But there was little hope, and the angel he remembered from his childhood appeared in his dream. While still a boy, he was very happy to meet this beautiful girl, who confessed to him that he could not even imagine how long she had been looking for him. He dreamed again of his birthday, which was celebrated at a festival held in honor of the god of love Agrofad, and his mother spoke of the fact that he would be able to find his destined mate. Mom listed to him from whom the gifts came and who wrote the letter, while the guests, meanwhile, asked the parents if they were thinking about their son's engagement. The guests talked about the fact that Asher is a very capable boy who will certainly attract a lot of attention to himself, after which he was dressed for the festival. The boy disappeared from the guests because he did not like all this, although his mother tried to find him. And suddenly he was grabbed by a stranger in a mask who invited Asher to follow her. She was a beautiful angel to him, who also stated that he had no idea how long she had been looking for him, when Asher asked the stranger if she was really looking for him, at which point the girl took off her mask to show him her face, and confirmed that she only wanted him. The servant woke up from a dream and now did not understand why he saw the face of our heroine in a dream from childhood. He was even more horrified by the fact that he discovered his body's reaction to memories and thoughts about this girl. It is worth saying that Asher was always surrounded by people who wanted to find him a wife, as well as ladies who offered themselves to him. And in their desire to take possession of his body, these young people were no different from wild animals. Now, after meeting this girl, this man began to see dreams that he had never seen before and considered it madness. Asher was always disgusted when others touched him, and when they found out that he was still not in a relationship, people started spreading rumors about him. The young priest now begged God to rid his body of dirty desires, but the current situation did not bring clarity to his life. The fact is that 10 years ago, he decided to become a priest and vowed to preserve his virginity until he meets the person with whom he wants to spend the rest of his life. Asher continued to pray to God to give him strength and help him to stand on the path, not succumbing to temptation, and to calm his sinful desire that lives in him day and night. The young man had never stuttered before while reciting this prayer, but now he noticed that something had gone wrong. Asher's prayer was interrupted by Bertie, who offered to have breakfast with him. Then the priest ran to his friend and began to ask for help in overcoming the temptation. Bertie decidedly wondered what kind of temptation was such that even the Holy Father could not overcome. He mentally went through the possible options, from which he assumed that they could be girls, jewelry, hallucinogenic herbs, and came to the conclusion that such a holy man could only be led to sin by drugs. Bertie promised Asher to do his best, after which the Holy Father explained in detail what was tormenting him. The priest admitted that he was led astray by a girl named Heiser, whose hair is red as the burning dawn, and added that when she looks at him, he simply loses his mind. Bertie replied that he did not remember any incredible beauties among the new seamstresses, and Asher did not understand how she could not catch his eye. The young minister did not understand that there was such a thing in our heroine, that the Holy Father lost his head over her, while he knew what beauties were running after him, and also thought that if the unseen beauty got a job working for them in the temple, then the visitors and money would increase. Now he was incredibly curious as to who this fatal young woman with hair as red as flame was. It was time for the service, and Bertie began to examine all those present, trying to understand where among them the conqueror of the heart of the Holy Father. Finally, he discovered her and received confirmation, although he immediately thought that there was nothing special about her and wondered where the Holy Father was looking. He whispered to Asher that this girl was pretty, of course, but the lady who sent him the gift last week was much prettier. Bertie tried to remind the Holy Father by saying that each of them had 2 eyes, 1 nose, and 1 mouth. But for Asher, this girl was somehow special and different from everyone else. He even asked his friend to look at her plump lips alone. Asher couldn't take it anymore and told Bertie to stop looking at this girl so intently, because she was already making him dizzy. The Holy Father stated that he needed to focus on his prayers, and Bertie concluded in his mind that perhaps the Holy Father was not all that beautiful, because practice had shown that his standards of beauty were as low as he himself was beautiful. He again paid attention to our heroine and came to the conclusion that this girl is not even charismatic. So everything converged to the fact that, apparently, Asher just went crazy. Bertie was even saddened by it and was now lost in conjecture as to what he should think and what it all meant. And focused on prayers, Asher began to receive sweet notes of an intimate nature. Knowing who they came from, he looked in the direction of our heroine, but she only yawned indifferently, so only one question throbbed in his head. What did she imagine? The notes came one after the other, and each one, with its passion, was worse than the previous one. Asher was soon startled to wake up during prayer and decided he should just ignore them. With all his might, he tried to calm himself down and concentrate on prayer, taking part in church affairs. But the man's imagination was gaining momentum, and the next notes only contributed to this, and it came to the point that the Holy Father lost all concentration and balance over himself. When he looked at our heroine, she was sweetly dozing during all the prayers. But he managed to conclude that she is a real shameless person, and who should be looked for. Ben finally appeared at the temple and called the priests to discuss the work of the new seamstresses, saying that they have a chance to point out the disadvantages and advantages of tailoring clothes. The man said that all his wishes and remarks can be expressed to our heroine. Bertie thought this was a great chance to find out why Asher was so obsessed with her. Heitzer specifically turned to the Holy Father and asked if he wanted her to sew a button on his sleeve. Bertie watched intently, but as far as he was concerned, the girl's behavior looked like a mere formality, and he did not understand at all what was so special about her. But this priest could not even imagine how many different incidents happened to our heroes in recent days. While our heroine was taking measurements with Asher, there were many random reasons to be on him, under him, as close as possible to him. As a result, the Holy Father already begged the girl not to touch him. Bertie, this time, stood up for his friend, calling our heroine shameless, and even intended to write a complaint against her. Asher said that he should not wish to do so, but Bertie burned with righteous anger, not realizing that this Holy Father had forgotten to be with this wicked woman. He even suggested that perhaps our heroine is a real witch, and Father Asher fell under her spell. But on the other hand, he decided that it was more like a joke, because a priest who received the blessing of the 5 gods could not be introduced to such a woman. And our elephant listened to these conversations and thought that his ears were already itching from all this. It all came to the point that Asher lost sleep, although he did not completely lose it because it was time for him to go to sleep when the man had very annoying dreams of a sinful nature. He admitted to himself that he could not stop thinking about this girl, and every day he became more and more crazy about her. Our heroine was engaged in her work, and they were returned models that needed adjustment. When the girl sat down to work, Asher sat opposite her, tormented by desire, although she did not understand what he was doing here at all, while she tried to avoid him, so as not to feel awkward in his presence. Heitzer decided to herself that she should just try not to make eye contact with him and leave as soon as possible. She was fascinated by the work process because someone asked to add buttons on the sleeves. Someone asked to make the form looser. Our heroine at work dangled her leg and at some point touched Asher's clothes, but he wrote it off as an accident. But as much as Heitzer was engrossed in her work, she forgot about her foot, which was already openly wandering over the priest's legs. Asher, outraged to the core by the fact that she provokes him even in front of people, stood up himself and picked up our heroine, taking the girl to the next room. The Holy Father began to ask the girl why she did this to him, reminding him that every time she met him, she tore his clothes and carelessly touched his body, and during prayer, she sent him terribly obscene notes. Our heroine specified which notes were in question, and then the man shouted that she really liked to pretend to be innocent so much, and even emphasized that he did not doubt her objections. Heitzer read the messages and admitted that it was her handwriting, but also stated that she did not send them, guessing whose hand it was. Our heroine told the Holy Father that if she told him the truth, then he would think she was crazy, but then she decided and declared that they were forged by a flying pink elephant, which of course caused an indignant reaction from the man. Heitzer replied that she had no intention of deceiving anyone, least of all him, and added that she knew nothing about the notes. And then Asher couldn't take it anymore and confessed to our heroine that, because of her, he sees erotic dreams every night, and it doesn't make his life easier as a priest trying to resist lust. He was already tearfully asking the girl to answer what she had done to him and why he could not think about anything else but her. And then he blurted out that she could not even imagine what it was like to be in an active state of sinful desire for days and at night. And at that moment, the door of the room could not withstand the pressure, and everyone who was interested in the circumstances of the personal affairs of the Holy Father rushed into the room. The reaction of those around him was very diverse. Some expressed their understanding. Some were surprised, some did not even suspect, and the young man himself was in shock. Newspapers didn't make themselves wait long, and the next edition told that the Holy Father, known for his integrity, made a shocking confession about his round-the-clock thirst for intimacy, and the reader was even asked a question for reflection, whether Asher had committed a sin. Our heroine also suffered, because she considered herself guilty of the fact that it is not easy for the Holy Father now and everyone is discussing him. Porin offered our heroine to finally accept his blessing, but she only rudely rejected his words. Then the girl began to beg the elephant to deprive her of his blessing, but he replied that he does not return. Heitzer understood that she was in real misfortune, but Porin did not think so and asked the girl what she was so worried about. Our heroine admitted that if she left the temple, she would lose money, and the elephant confirmed her assumption, reminding her that she didn't even have savings. Heitzer generally expressed her sympathy for the fact that, in childhood, she gave all her savings to the needs of the church, which was a big surprise for the elephant. Our heroine also told Porin that once a child in a rabbit mask stole all her money and it happened at a festival in honor of the god Agrafad. As a result, our heroine blamed the pink elephant for everything, and she herself thought that if she had known what perversions Agrafad was capable of, she would never have gone to that festival. And the elephant looked at her with his innocent eyes and declared that he personally was not in why is not guilty and definitely did not steal her money. The offended girl went on her way, and Porin flew after her and asked to pay attention to him, after which he added that Asher is not so clean and will definitely give her a beautiful night of love. The elephant tried in every way to encourage our heroine, and also asked to hear him, but she did not want it. At one point, she even began to belch the elephant out of her head, but it was like an exorcism rite, which terrified people. As a result, they tried to separate from each other and finally managed to leave each other alone. And since our heroine decided with all her might to throw the elephant somewhere far away, taking revenge on him for all his sins, it turned out that she launched it into Asher, who writhed in pain. Our heroine approached the priest and apologized for throwing an obscure object at him, to which Asher said that she could have come up with a better excuse. The girl sincerely regretted what had happened and confirmed again that she did not do it on purpose, after which she began to help him up. Asher replied that he was fine, but our heroine saw how he was suffering and began to ask if he had a lot of pain in his lower abdomen. The man refused to help, But Heiser insisted on just checking if everything was okay and promised that she would not do anything strange or unnecessary. As the servant continued to drift away, our heroine had already stated firmly that she needed to make sure he was okay, and his whining made her worry about him even more. Asher looked at the girl with displeasure and told her firmly that he had no intention of showing her anything. He confirmed again that he was fine and limped slowly towards the temple. But then, as if at the behest of a pink elephant, a downpour fell from the sky, and our heroine caught up with the priest, offering him to go to the temple together. Heizer again apologized to her husband for what happened and added that now he has to walk slowly. But he was already begging her to forget about everything that happened. Finally, our heroes reached the monastery, although they were soaked to the bone, but they were glad that the back door of the temple was open. The girl told Asher that she had never seen this room before, and he simply stated that now the wood would kindle better and they would be able to warm up. A pink elephant also appeared in the room, which, winking, told our heroine that all this will continue with them until they spend the night together. Heizer came to the conclusion that Porin's attempts to set her up with this person only made things worse, because he was clearly uncomfortable around her, and began to question whether it was right to torture himself by stretching time senselessly. Our heroine discovered a bottle of wine and filled the glasses, offering one to the servant. When he asked what she was doing, the girl replied that she was just trying to apologize, adding that the wine wouldn't hurt him. Asher pointed out that he does not drink alcohol and was now staring intently at the girl. Our heroine concluded that he doesn't care about love, and he doesn't drink alcohol either, and he doesn't have any friends to talk to, after which she asked how he copes with stress. Asher replied that entertainments are trivial things that tend to spoil a person's health and psyche, to which our heroine remarked that he is 5 years younger than her and lives more boringly than a pensioner. The young priest was very surprised that there was a difference of 5 years between them. Heizer replied that it was strange that he only found out about it now and invited him to sit next to her, promising that she would not force him to drink alcohol. Our heroine noted for herself that this man is quite handsome and even his chastity suits him, although she did not believe that he was still a virgin. At one point, the girl announced that she was feeling dizzy, and Asher remarked that it was time for her to finish the alcohol, reminding her that she had already drained the second glass. Our heroine replied that she does not get drunk from 2 glasses of wine and added the remark that if she starts doing something strange, then he can tie her up. Suddenly, Heizer asked the priest if he knew his hand was as wide as her thigh, to which he replied in silence. Asher reached for her lips and attributed it to the fact that she had a few drops of wine left there. The priest frankly admitted to our heroine that he would not like to see her and asked the girl to ignore him during meetings. Heizer asked the priest if he was so afraid of sinning, to which the man replied that he would not sleep with such a shameless girl. Our heroine noted that he could have said it in a softer way, but then she decided to take his words as a compliment, after which she asked the Holy Father what he thought, why she came to work at the temple. Asher didn't have an answer, so Heizer admitted that she wasn't here of her own free will and, not knowing how to explain her situation, asked if he ever felt like he was locked in a cave alone. The girl continued to say that there was no light, no way out, no matter how long she beat against the wall. She confessed to the priest that she lived in this state for many years until a ray of sunlight broke into her cave. Heizer explained that it was a real mouse squeak that led her to him. Then she concluded with doom that that one light had disappeared in an instant, and that was why she was here. Asher asked our heroine what she was going to do next, and the girl answered that she wanted to become a designer because it was the only thing she was good at, and added that one mouse prevented her from achieving her goal, so now she is only happy with the work process. Heizer wanted to find out from the priest how his life turned out, but he immediately replied that there was nothing interesting in it. Our heroine emphasized that life doesn't necessarily have to be something interesting, and then asked why he wants to keep his chastity so much, and even suggested that maybe he has some problems with it. But then the girl remembered their night in the utility room and admitted that she thought he was doing very well there. And then the young man admitted that he had promised himself to his first love. Our heroine began to ask the priest who this girl was, only to find out that she was not from here, and the man added that he heard the call of God before he could find her. Asher admitted to Heizer that when they met in the alley, he was looking for that girl, but then he lost all hope, and the conversation ended in rain. Now our heroine thought about the fact that all these years he could not forget his first love, and now she did not understand why Porin needed to spoil such a man, but the elephant only disgruntledly pushed her to action. Heizer did not want to do this to Asher, but life did not end there, and it simply forced her to take this step, although she still did not know how to put obscenities into the head of such an innocent man, and decided that perhaps the gods were not on his side. Our heroine now turned to the pink elephant with a claim. Does he understand that she is doing all this for him and really needs his support? The elephant innocently replied that he knew and understood everything, but this began to tease the girl even more, and then she ordered him to inform her of his plan, as she should have been aware of what she should do and how to behave. Porn replied that he intended to force the sleeping priest to experience incredible pleasure. Our heroine emphasized in response that this was not an explanation at all, and simply expressed the hope that she would not be locked up somewhere in the basement later for the fact that she broke into the clergyman's bedchamber and actually attacked him. Already at the door, the girl remembered how Asher had told her that only those with divine power could enter this room, and thought that she was even more at ease with the elephant. Our heroine asked Porn if he was sure that Asher was asleep, and he replied that he had put him in a deep sleep and he would definitely not wake up. Heitzer entered the Holy Father's room and approached him, mentally regretting that she would have to do this to his holy body. She undressed and mentally promised him that after this night he would not see her again, and mentally asked him not to wake up. When our heroine was undressing him, the elephant could not help but comment that this man's physique is wonderful, and some places are completely different in perfect size. Heitzer asked Porn if he really thought that now was the best time to enjoy the body, and suggested that he better take care of her because she was nervous. But he simply added that it would not be easy for her to handle this man's charms. Our heroine herself understood that its size was really significant and should increase even more, but she set herself to the fact that everything would work out for her and she would cope with everything. Everything seemed to start well, but somehow the required reaction from the sleeping Asher was not there at all, and this upset the girl a little. Since Porn was monitoring the process, he assumed that our heroine was somehow clumsily holding the charms or not influencing them enough. The pink elephant began to think about how to help the girl, and as a result, came to the conclusion that since they were working on a priest who had been locked in a temple all his life, he might be affected by all the obscenities whispered in his ear. Our heroine began to follow this advice, although she had never done anything like this before, and decided to ask if he liked it when she touched him in particularly sensitive places. Porn monitored the reaction of the man, and at some point he recorded the activity, which only encouraged our heroine, who immediately entered the courage, whispering in his ear obscenity after obscenity. The elephant reminded Heitzer that she wasn't selling this priest's private organ. She just needed to move him from a dead end, so he insisted that kind words would be enough, and eventually things went up. When everything was fine with the priest, now problems arose with our heroine, because his size was considerable. Heitzer began to ask Porn to help her with this moment, and asked the elephant if he had any painkillers because she couldn't cope otherwise, but the pink trader friend seemed to evaporate. When our heroine adapted to the situation and more or less coped, the priest woke up at the last moment and asked what she was doing. Asher was extremely disappointed when he discovered what had happened and simply stated the fact that she had unscrupulously stolen his virginity. Our heroine was now lost in guessing what she should do and realized that when she had gone too far, she must immediately put an end to this incomprehensible blessing of the elephant, even if she was arrested. Heitzer told this man that she could accept 10 such blessings from him, after which she promised never to touch him again, and he punished her by asking her to remember that day when she shamed him and to do good penance. Since Heitzer fell asleep, a satisfied Asher decided to take a bath and then find out what happened. When the priest returned to the bed, he found it empty, which made him very sad, feeling used. Asher was very upset by this fact because he was expecting at least a kiss after what happened, especially considering it was his first experience. And our heroine was happy that she received the blessing of the pink elephant, and now she can say goodbye to him. Then the girl remembered how Asher caught her in the act and now wondered what she would say to him if they suddenly met. On the other hand, she was more warmed by the thought that she could now live peacefully and do her work. But she only thought so because at work, all her thoughts still went to the priest and their night of love spent together. Even Ben made a remark to our heroine and reminded her that the deadlines are getting closer, and she still hasn't prepared her work. Heitzer thought that she really had nothing to worry about anymore, especially since she hadn't even seen Asher in the past 10 days. The girl remembered when before that they met time and time again, but Porn was to blame for that. And yet she was interested in how the Holy Father was doing there, and in what condition his body and soul were. She wanted to know about it because she had to finish her work and leave the temple. Our heroine consoled herself with the hope that everything would be over in a little while. But on the other hand, she wondered if they would never see each other again. Ben talked about the day of handing in the work and even invited Heitzer to be present during the prayer at the pulpit. When our heroine clarified why exactly she needed to do this, Ben said that she had the most work experience and it would be easier for him. The girl thought about this proposal, and she came to the conclusion that this might be the last chance to see Asher, and agreed. Many journalists gathered in the temple that day, and everyone talked about the fact that a new form of clothing for ministers is being introduced from this day. The attention of the paparazzi was also focused on the person of the Holy Father, who just came to take his seat. Our heroine noticed that he looked too pale and even suggested that he might still be in shock over the loss of his virginity. She even somehow felt sorry for him, and suddenly another minister announced that Asher would now give the closing prayer. A young man came out and said a prayer that one should praise the gods, even if a person turned from the right path. Our heroine noticed that his voice had not changed and decided to look at him. And then she discovered a thread sticking out unsightly on the collar of his priestly caftan. At first, the girl was indignant that someone did a bad job, and then she decided to take scissors and correct the situation, because soon they had to do a photo shoot, and she did not want an obvious defect to be shown. She sneaked up behind and made just one scissor move, but the effect was stunning. Everyone present could now see Asher's 8 attractive cubes and his neatly tied belly button. The cameramen also froze until their fellow journalists began to incite them to take active action. Confused, Asher slowly turned around and pointedly stated to our heroine that he didn't even expect anything else from her. And on the eve of this event, Asher had lunch with Bertie, who asked him what he was worried about lately because he seemed to be burdened by something. The young man even suggested that it was somehow connected with the seamstress, who used to make his head spin. Asher replied that it was a very difficult situation. But Bertie insisted on being frank, citing that he was worried. Then the Holy Father admitted that he could not keep his vow of chastity and disgraced his holiness. Asher told his brother the whole story, to which he immediately declared that it was necessary to report what had happened. But the Holy Father replied that it was not necessary. He explained that he was only interested in one thing, why she did it. And Bertie quickly replied that it was because he was just a nice man, albeit a priest. Asher regretfully asked his brother if this girl just wanted to use his body without any feelings or responsibilities. His friend's reaction did not disappear from Bertie, and he realized that he had seriously fallen into the woman's trap. The young minister assumed that this shameless girl had deliberately provoked the priest and taken advantage of him. He analyzed the actions of our heroine and assumed that she attracted him with low-quality flirting, after which she seduced, and then simply trampled on his feelings. Asher was shocked by what he heard and did not understand why our heroine treated him so coldly, and even wondered if he was so bad that he deserved such treatment. Bertie asked Asher's opinion about this, and when he agreed with his friend's assumptions, Bertie was finally sure that Heizer had come to them in the temple precisely for the purpose of conquest and further training. He even noted that she was waiting for the priest to approach her first, to which Asher said that he definitely wouldn't be the first to talk to her. Bertie doubted his brother's stability and added that she could look at him all day without taking her eyes off it. As a result, they sat near our heroine for 2 hours, but she not only did not look at him with passionate eyes, but did not turn her head in their direction at all. Asher told Bertie that it was somehow risky to stay here, but he did not understand the words of the Holy Father. Asher was now more than certain that our heroine really planned to seduce him, which she did, and he also assumed that she was extremely impatient and couldn't wait much longer. The priest also emphasized that there is a big difference between having knowledge about something and making one's desires a goal. He was looking at her legs, and even in ordinary movements he could see seductive features. Bertie listened to his friend and then came to the conclusion that he seems to be normal, but sometimes he looks a little perverted. When our heroine lay down on the chair, Asher again reacted, although he said in his voice that he was annoyed by it all, and then Bertie asked the Holy Father what it was about this girl that affected him so much. And then Asher replied that she was cute, to which Bertie again thought that if his brother went on at this rate, people would soon decide that he had fallen in love with a seamstress, a fact that troubled him greatly. And now it was the day of prayer, when the Holy Father was to speak the word and pray, but he was undressed in front of everyone, and it infuriated Bertie. Our heroine looked at the pink baby elephant that was flying over the head of the Holy Father and asked doomedly how he could do such a thing to her. Heizer decidedly didn't understand why Porin had set her up with this particular man again. And Asher, in turn, asked our heroine why she looks even more shocked than he does, being in her position. The Holy Father, at this moment, thought that if it were not for his conversation with Bertie, which took place the day before, then he would definitely have bought into her game, an almost genuine, innocent facial expression, and our heroine continued to be surprised by what was happening. Heizer decided to save the situation and rushed to cover the body of the Holy Father, shouting at the same time that no one should look at him. But she should have touched the man as he again reacted to her and asked to bring him at least some clothes. Now the ministers were helping the Holy Father, and he was thinking about why Heizer did this and whether she did it on purpose. The newspapers again did not make themselves wait long, and now reported that the servants had difficulties because the new clothes were very easily torn, and our heroine was indignant to the extreme, and the elephant replied that he was glad to see her. Heizer asked Porin why he reappeared to her when she fulfilled his conditions and spent the night with the priest Asher. The pink elephant advised the girl that when she enters into contractual relations with someone, she should carefully read every page of the contract, especially the back pages and fine print. Our heroine clarified with him what he was talking about, but Porin, as if by the way, spoke questioningly. Didn't he remember the details? The very next moment, the girl found out that her and Asher's nights of love should take place at least once every 15 days, and even praised herself for her cleverness. The pink dream asked the girl to think positively after such pleasant nights with Asher, emphasizing that nothing bad had happened to the Holy Father and advised her to continue in the same spirit and at the same pace in the future. Now, under the vaults of the temple, the confession of our heroine sounded, where she admitted that she had an intimate relationship with one priest, and now she did not know what to do. The girl told the priest that today she would have to come to him again and again to spend a passionate night of love, and then asked his opinion whether God would forgive her this sin and this desire. Asher began to think that Heiser was leaving and warned him that she would come to him again and wait for a unique night of love. The man decided that he needed to wash again and prepare thoroughly. But when he went to bed, he caught himself thinking that he was waiting for our heroine and was horrified by this realization. A thought crept into his head that he was doing all this just for her sake. And in his imagination, he prepared himself for our heroine like some kind of sweet dessert. As a result, Asher came to the conclusion that this cannot be allowed to happen again. He decided that he would do everything to resist the temptation and to be firmly in control during her visit. Asher even thought about acting harder if the girl insisted on his way, and he also wanted to cheat on her. His most important decision was to lead Heizer to a prayer of repentance for his actions. But suddenly he heard her voice outside the door. Heizer asked Porn not to act like the latest pervert and reminded him that Asher had woken up last time, just as things were coming to a climax. The pink elephant confirmed all the girl's words, to which she called him a devil, and asked what she would have to do if the Holy Father woke up this time as well. Porn concluded that the divine power of this priest is strong enough and able to quickly destroy his influence, after which he asked our heroine to act faster until he woke up, reminding her that she has already tried all this and knows how to behave in a similar situation. Heizer was terribly angry with the pink elephant and simply asked to open the door for her. Our heroine sat on Asher's bed and wondered why she came here, while the man, meanwhile pretending to be asleep, also wondered why she was doing this. Heizer began to gently touch Asher's face, and at one point she completely apologized to him. She even admitted to him that she really didn't want to do it. Asher remembered a conversation with Bertie, who asked him how he could let this happen and admitted that if he met such a woman, he would hardly be able to resist. And our heroine came closer to him and gently whispered a request not to wake up today until she did everything herself. At one point, the girl suspected that he was actually pretending to be asleep and asked the elephant if it was so. Asher could not understand who our heroine was talking to, especially since he did not feel the presence of anyone else in the room. Heizer assumed Porn was consecrating Asher's body in some way, and Asher was now sure there was someone else in the room. While Porn was doing his job, our heroine noticed that the man's charm had completely declined and doomed to inform the elephant about it. Asher couldn't stand it any longer, and realizing where this elephant was, grabbed him and fell to the bed. Porn stuck his nose out from under his palm and asked the surprised priest to let him go. Now the elephant shouted that he had come here to give the man strength and begged Asher to let him go. As soon as the priest loosened his grip, the elephant climbed onto our heroine's head and breathed a sigh of relief, glad that he had not been crushed. Asher asked our heroine for an explanation, and then Heizer told him everything in order. And then the priest found out that they had to spend a night together once every 15 days, and today was just the next term. And besides, the girl noted that she wanted to cope with her duties before leaving the temple. Asher was surprisingly calm and understanding about the situation, and our heroine asked in response why he agreed so easily. And the man replied that if this is God's will, then it is his sacred duty to follow it. Heizer asked the elephant what he had done to the man to make him believe he was a god, and Porin admitted that he just needed to show him his powers beforehand. Asher was interested in only one question that tormented him for a single day, and he finally asked our heroine if she was not at all interested in him as a man. He also decided to make one condition clear right away, and announced to Heizer that he absolutely did not like feeling used and then thrown away. The Holy Father approached our heroine and expressed his hope that she would still enjoy meeting him, and was waiting for confirmation.